as you find that comfortable lying down position, just begin settling into the rhythm of your breath. Just noticing the support of the ground underneath you, where it's meeting your body. How the movement of your breath meets that support. And just settle for a moment or so. As you settle, noticing any sensations or qualities to your physical body that are grabbing your attention, whether they're comfortable or uncomfortable, simply notice them. And as you notice anything that pops up, allow yourself to kind of explore those sensations a bit further as we settle in here. Noticing any other qualities to that sensation that you're noticing. Maybe there's a color associated with that area of the body that comes into your mind's eye. Maybe a shape or a texture comes through. Maybe a thought or a memory or an emotion comes up. Or perhaps just the sensation that you're noticing starts to shift and change, increase or decrease. Over the next few breaths from this, on your back position, if your knees aren't already bent, let them bend so the feet can rest on the ground. And just start gently tilting your pelvis forwards and backwards. So maybe on an exhale, you're going to find a bit of a flattening to the lower spine against the ground as the pelvis tips. And on an inhale, you can let that pelvis flow forwards. So there's a bit of an arch or a lift coming through the lower spine on the ground. Just move in and out, following your breath, kind of like a cat stretch, but lying down where there's some wave-like motion coming through the spine. Noticing how the rest of the body adjusts and moves as we tilt the pelvis. How that pelvic movement, small as it may be, influences everything else on top of it and below it. A few more breaths like this, tilting forwards and backwards through the pelvis. Next time You tilt the pelvis back so you're flattening that low back along the ground. Just hold that position for a couple big deep inhales. Notice how it feels to breathe into this straightened posture through the low back, through the rib cage, where it forces the breath, where the breath moves to from this position. And after you do about 3 full breath cycles in that flattened position, you can let the pelvis fall forwards or tip forwards. Don't force any position, but just allow a little bit of an arch or a natural sway to come through that low back. And then again, take a few deep full breaths into this position. Noticing again any new freedoms to the breath pattern, how its movement has changed around this different pelvic position. Then eventually you can allow a bit of a rocking to come through the knees, letting the knees fall side to side, just beginning to open up through the hips a bit more. Moving into whatever range of motion feels good as we begin class today. Maybe it's small, maybe it's bigger, maybe you're working into more of a stretch, maybe you're not. As always, let your body guide you a little bit here. This is your time to sink into your body and kind of release any control or expectation. Just simply be in your bodies as we move through a few movements and some breath. Next time you come through center, you can keep the knees there. We'll pick up your right knee and foot, and you can cross the right foot over the left thigh. A couple options. If you're already feeling quite a bit of a hip stretch here, you can stay here. Another option would be to pick up that thigh and kind of hold behind that left thigh. So you're hugging in that left thigh, and you can use a towel or a strap to help you with this too. And you can hug that in as tight as you want for as deep of a stretch you want into that right hip. Taking a few deep breaths into this hip stretch. Maybe a gentle rock back and forth in this position if you're hugged up. Allowing your breath to help you expand and release into this stretch. So it's not totally static. We're still engaging with our breath to expand and release. For the next few breaths, you can begin to release that left thigh down if you had lifted it up, but keep the ankle crossed over the thigh, and from here let all of that whole complex fall over towards the left side. So a bit of a twist, letting the left knee fall over, the right foot's going to go to the left side. A bit of a more tangled twist than we're used to. That's okay, and then you can look over to the right, so you're twisting through that whole body. And breathing in whatever depth you reach your end point. breaths here. And then you can untangle yourself and come back through center with those knees. And we'll just go back to that side to side movement for a couple breaths, noticing any changes or shifts that have taken place side to side in the hips, maybe in that low back, as you let the knees fall side to side. You might also know notice how the breath has changed. Maybe it's allowed to fill a bit more of the body as you inhale. Maybe you're starting to get a few spontaneous kind of deeper breaths or sighs that typically isn't indicative of a shift in the nervous system. We kind of have that sudden intake of a deep breath or a sigh. Same as when a horse is licking or chewing, or again kind of sighing. That's often a sign of a shift from a reactive state in the nervous system to a more relaxed state in the nervous system, which is a good thing. Next time you come through center, we'll repeat that sequence on the opposite side. So you're going to pick up the left knee and foot and cross it over the right thigh. You can either stay here or you can pick all of that up and hug behind the right thigh, hugging it in for a hip stretch. You can either stay still here along with the breath, or you can do a little bit of side to side rocking if that feels good. Deep breaths all the way into that hip while we're stretching. Couple more breaths here. And then as you're ready to, you can release that leg, but keep the ankle crossed over, and we'll let all of that fall over towards the right side while you look and open up to the left. For this kind of tangled up twist. Breathing deeply. Filling up that belly and the rib cage with your inhale. Maybe inching a bit further into that twist with the exhales. Over the next breath or so, you can untangle those knees, come back through center, and one more time, just let the knees fall side to side. Noticing how things have changed, if they've changed, with no expectation. Just a simple noticing, observing. And then come through center with the knees and go back to, just for a moment, that tilting forwards and backwards of the pelvis. And again, just to notice, just to compare and contrast to where we started, how it's perhaps changed, shifted, perhaps there's more range, perhaps the breath can follow a bit differently. No right or wrong answers, we're just exploring. and 2 more breaths here. And then we can roll over and we'll find our way to all fours. And as you come through all fours, position yourself to work into your cat stretch. Fairly familiar move. Again, finding that arching and rounding through the spine, and accompanying it with that same tilting of the pelvis we just had on your back. Whereas you exhale, flattening and rounding through the rest of the spine. As you inhale, tipping the pelvis forwards to drop down with the rest of the spine. In and out. Follow your own breath. Work into your own movement. And see if you can really feel each part of this movement. If it helps, you can close the eyes if they aren't closed already. And just let your body move you. In and out for a few more breaths. Maybe adding some side to side into that arching and rounding of the spine, of the pelvis. No right or wrong answers. Just simply moving. Next time you come through center, you can pause there and take your hands and spin them around so they're first out to the side, fingers are pointing first out to the side, and then maybe starting to angle back towards your knees. A little bit of a forearm stretch, wrist stretch. Doesn't have, you can only needs to be as intense as you want it to be. So whatever angle in the hands gets you a bit of a wrist stretch to start. Let the elbows bend a bit. And if you want more of a stretch, you can even start sinking the hips away from those hands. And some of you might be cursing me right now, but I have you all on mute, so I can't hear you. So that's okay. Whatever depth feels appropriate for you. You can even add in some of that arching and rounding with the rest of your spine here, and noticing how that changes the stretch in your wrists. Couple more breaths. And then walk those hands back around so they're forwards again. Bring the knees a bit wider and we'll push the hips back towards the child's pose. And breathing. Feeling those hips, the low back, the rib cage with the breath. For the next breath or so, come up through all fours. And we'll bring your left foot forward so you're in your kneeling lunge. Sinking forwards into that foot knee so that you get a stretch through the right hip. And let's right away take both hands to the inside of that front foot. And you can let that front knee fall to the outside. On an exhale, falling away from you. And then on an inhale, bring it all back to center line. Just move in and out here. Bringing it as close into center line as you can with that inhale, and then letting it fall away. The rest of your body might turn away as well. Just moving into that hip capsule. It can be as big or as small of a movement as you'd like. Perhaps it even feels good to walk your hands a step away, so your hands are kind of at an angle to the hips. And then move in and out. Good. Come back through center line. And if you haven't already, take a step away with the hands and walk them away from the hips as far as you can. You might even find you can get a little bit lower through the hips. Maybe one elbow, maybe both elbows comes towards the ground. This is a pretty deep stretch, so work into whatever level works. Start by walking the hands away and then begin lowering the torso down. Over a few breaths, doesn't have to be all at once. Begin kind of coming out of that, walk the hands back towards the foot, and you can tuck the toes on that back leg, straighten that back leg and scoot it forwards a bit so it's about a step forwards, so that that heel can come all on the back leg, can come all the way down, and then straighten that front leg as well, so you end up folding forwards over the front leg. So both heels are on the ground. And then you're reaching towards the ground, maybe holding on the calf somewhere if you can't reach all the way towards the ground. Hands can be on either side of that front toes as you get there though. Breathing. If balance is an issue here, think about taking the feet a bit wider on the mat, so you have a wider kind of base of support. That's just fine too. Few breaths. And then you can take that back foot and step it up to be even with your front foot, so you end up in a forward fold, just letting those arms dangle down towards the feet. Knees can bend as much as you need to help support the torso, making sure you're folding and draping forwards fairly relaxed. Few breaths, letting that head relax, upper body relax as much as you can so you get a bit of traction through the upper body. Maybe a little bit of shifting back and forth, letting that upper body ragdoll down. Whatever feels good here. Over the next few breaths, you can slowly roll yourself up towards a standing position. Maybe reaching all the way to the ceiling. Big full body reach. And then exhaling to drop down to a fold again. And then you can walk the hands forwards, let the knees bend so you can come all the way back through all fours. And we're going to take the opposite foot to where we started, so the right foot, if you're following me, forwards to find your kneeling lunge. As you find that, drop forwards into that front foot, front knee, so you're finding a stretch through the back knee, back hip. And hands right away can come to the inside of that front foot. Just beginning to let that front knee fall open on the exhales and come in on the inhales. It's a gentle opening and closing. Maybe letting the rest of the body move away from that front knee as you open it, and then hugging everything back into the center line. A few more times. Maybe on the next one, next time you come through center line, you can start walking the hands a step or so away. Maybe pushing through them to help you push back into the hips. You can either stay here, or you can start looking towards lowering yourself even closer to the ground, lowering that chest towards the ground. Maybe the elbows come down. Breathe into whatever position you find. This is a pretty deep stretch, so ease into it. Breath by breath. Eventually start walking yourself back towards center line. Ease yourself out of this. And we're going to straighten that back knee. Take it a step forward so that the heel can plant on the ground and that back leg can straighten, and then the front leg will straighten to meet. So you'll end up folded over that front leg again in a split stance. Few breaths once you find that. Working towards keeping both knees straight, but work to where you're at. One or two bigger, deeper breaths here. And then you can take that back foot, bring it even with the front foot. And this time we're going to take the feet out so they're a bit wider, so about mat distance apart. And then relax into your fold from here. Again, allowing those knees to bend as much as you need so you can let the torso drape forwards and relax. Heels should stay on the ground though. Once you find your fold, just take a few deep breaths, imagining your spine lengthening, especially through the upper back, through the shoulders. Imagine there's some space being created there with the breath and gravity. Few more breaths. On an inhale, you can roll yourself all the way up through standing, reaching all the way up to the ceiling. Big reach. Whole body reach. And then exhales, let everything fold forwards again. And we'll find all fours again, so let yourself come down, bending the knees. And then take the knees as wide as the mat and push the hips back through a child's pose again. Deep breath here. Noticing how the breath can move through the spine, through the hips. After all those deep releases. On your next breath, walk the hands over to the right and engage through the hands to push back through the hips. Bit of a side body stretch here. Deep breaths. Walk the hands through center when you're ready, and then over to the other side. Pushing through the hands at first to help you sink back through the hips. And find that side body stretch. Eventually make your way back through center. And we'll come up through all fours. And this time we're going to slide your left knee forward so it's kind of in between those hands, or even a bit more angled towards the left hand. And that left foot can kind of walk itself out, so there's an angle at that front shin here. And then you can slowly start shifting your weight back through the hips for a bit of a pigeon pose. So back leg is straight, and you're sitting your weight down equally through both hips, but you're going to feel a stretch on that left hip. Use your hands to support you high here, maybe a little bit of wiggling back and forth, a bit of arching and rounding, noticing how that changes the stretch through the hip. And if you'd like to, you can walk the hands forwards, lower the elbows, and come low over that front hip, if that feels good for you. Otherwise, stay high. Either position, breathe deeply into the hip, that you're stretching into the pelvis, into the belly. Few more breaths here, high or low. And eventually walk yourself back up and through. You can tuck those toes on the back leg to help you kind of push forwards, and then out of this, you can take that left hip back, and we'll switch it for that right knee forwards, angling towards the right wrist. And then finding the same pigeon stretch on this opposite side. Back leg can be straight. Staying high at first for a couple breaths. Sinking the weight back through the hips equally, so you're not letting yourself fall over to one side. The weight is still going through the center of your pelvis, which means that hip you're stretching will likely be hovering. That's okay. Hands help you to balance. Breathing into the depths of this stretch. If you want to, and when you're ready, you can lower through the elbows and come low, folding forwards over that front hip. Again, the weight stays equally balanced side to side, so we're not lopsided, falling over to one side or the other. And breathing fully all the way down through and into that hip stretch. You can imagine the inhale helping you to expand that stretch. And the exhale helping you to release, maybe a bit deeper. As you feel ready to, you can begin taking yourself out of this, pressing pressing through the hands, tucking those back toes to help launch you forwards a little bit to untangle yourself. And then we're going to find that child's pose again as you get there. So knees come wide, pushing the hips back and down towards the heels, letting the chest and forehead come towards the ground. Few breaths. And then when you're ready to, let's come up through all fours, just enough so that you can push yourself or find a seated position. Let's find a cross-legged seated position if that's comfortable for you. If not, any other seated position is fine as well. From your cross-legged position, if you need, put a pillow or some sort of prop underneath your butt to sit on just to lift you up a little bit. If you find in this position you tend to be rounded or a little bit slouched forwards, having something under your seat is a good idea just to keep you upright. Not necessary, but just an option. As you find this cross-legged position, let's take the right hands to the ground, left hands to the right knee, and just find a little bit of an open seated twist here, pulling on that right knee to help you open the chest and the shoulders towards the right hand behind you just for support. And breathing. A few more breaths here, inching deeper into that twist, perhaps with every exhale. And then as you're ready to, you can untwist, coming back through center. We'll find the same twist the other way, so right hand to left knee, left hand behind you for support, and then opening yourself to the left. Chest stays open, shoulders stay open. Imagine that it's simply your spine doing this rotation, so you're not closing off to find it. We're still nice and open. Both seat bones should still be fairly equal on the ground. Few breaths, deep and full. When you're ready, untwist, coming back through center. Let those fingertips rest in front of you here. And let's maybe take before we do that, let's take the feet out a bit so we're sitting more into a butterfly type position. So feet towards each other, hands can start on the ankles, and knees just opening to either side. And then as you're ready, you can start walking those hands away from the feet and forwards, So just imagine that the hands are helping pull your torso into a fold over the hips, over the feet. And as much as possible, avoid kind of collapsing or curling forwards for now. Just think of keeping your torso in a nice straight line and reaching forwards or folding forwards. Take a few breaths, and whatever your end range is. Couple more breaths here. Maybe fingers are able to walk a step further with every exhale. Feeling the inhale expand all the way down to the bottom of the belly, maybe into the pelvis. And slowly you can walk those hands back towards center, back towards your feet. And we'll take both legs out long but in a wide stance. So if you're sitting on a mat vertically, the feet are going to be on the outside of the mat. Wide leg, seated position here. And first off, let's take hands on either side of that right thigh. And you're going to start walking yourself into a fold towards that right foot. Breathing as you find that. Keep both seat bones on the ground so we're not lifting or falling over to the right. We're simply folding to whatever capacity we can to that right side. And then you can walk yourself back a little bit, and we're going to take your right hand, place it on the inside of that right knee. And if you can, see if you can drop your elbow and shoulder so they're kind of resting on the inside of that knee. And then as you find that, left hand can first come to the hip. Maybe the hand comes towards the shoulder. Maybe the hand reaches up towards the ceiling. Maybe it starts reaching over your head towards that right foot. Can be whatever variation feels appropriate for you. Just a couple breaths in whatever pose you find here, and then you can unwind yourself, lift up through center, and we'll start walking hands on either side of the left thigh, walking those hands towards the left foot. So gentle fold over that left leg, keeping both seat bones on the ground. One or two more breaths here. And then you can walk the hands back enough so that you can find that left hand on the inside and perhaps drop that elbow, shoulder to the inside of the left leg. Right hand can begin its walk over. So start on the hip, maybe to the shoulder, maybe straight up towards the ceiling, maybe up and over towards that left foot. Again, make sure you're not rolling forwards to do this. We want to keep the rib cage fairly open on that, especially on that right side. So think of it as a lift up and over, not a lift forwards and over. A few breaths as you find your end range. You'll likely feel this all the way through the side body, maybe into the sides of the low back and the hip. And then you can begin making your way up and back through center. Find yourself back to a comfortable seated position, whether that's cross-legged or something else. And if seated isn't comfortable for you to maintain for a few moments here, you can come all the way down to lying on your back. Whatever is comfortable for you to maintain some focus on your breathing is suitable for this next few moments. So from seated, let yourself sit up nice and tall. Hands can be resting wherever they're comfortable, on the knees or at your sides. Knees is probably most comfortable. And as you get there, just allow your eyes to soften or close and settle into your breathing again. Following it as it moves in through the nose or the mouth and travels down through the rest of the body. Taking note of how the upper body moves with the inhale and the exhale, how the sides of the ribs move with the inhale and the exhale, how the belly moves with the inhale and the exhale. Allow your body to just subtly begin to relax more and more in this seated position. Or if you're lying down, allow the body to become heavier against the support of the ground. And regardless of what position you're in, allow your awareness to drift down to your seat, to your pelvis, where your hips and your butt are meeting the mat and the ground underneath you. And notice how it feels to sit in this area from the inside out. How are your hips meeting the ground? How does everything inside of that pelvis feel in this moment? Drawing your attention all the way down to that root, our main base of support. And on the inhales, I want you to imagine that you're driving this area of your body, these roots of our body, a pelvis, into the ground even more. So inhaling to expand through the whole body, so we're pushing everything down towards our seat. Exhaling to grow a bit heavier into that seat. And if you're a visual person, in your mind's eye, you can imagine as you inhale, it's almost like you're pushing roots into the ground, growing downwards with that inhale, and exhaling to really just sit down, to root down into those roots. Few breaths here. Expanding your roots into the ground underneath you. Letting your imagination run wild here with how those roots look, how they're reaching down. A few more breaths. And as those roots grow deep down into the ground, we're going to kind of reverse where our imagination is going. So now instead of the inhales pushing those roots, driving those roots, helping those roots grow downwards, we're now going to imagine that the inhales are helping us pull up some energy from those roots. So we're going to let your imagination run a bit wild here. You can choose what that energy source looks like for you. Maybe it's a light source, maybe it's a certain color of light, maybe it's water or a liquid. Whatever suits you, we're going to imagine on the inhale those roots are drawing a form of energy up from where they rooted down into. And the inhale is going to help pull that energy up through the rest of the body. So inhaling to draw up, exhaling to let that integrate into the body. And repeat that process a few times. Inhaling to let yourself grow maybe a bit taller, a bit more integrity to your seat with these strong roots underneath you. And that energy source flowing upwards through your body from those roots. Play with this idea in your mind. A few breaths. And if as you do this, you notice any residual areas of tension or holding on or restriction in your physical body, play with imagining as you draw that energy source up from your roots, it's moving towards that area of stuckness or restriction or uncomfortable sensation and filling that area up too. Exhales might begin looking like a sigh or having some actual noise to them. Allow that if it feels okay for you. Couple more breaths of filling that body up with your chosen energy source. Allowing that energy to fill your body from the bottom upwards, all the way up through your chest, through your shoulders, through your neck, through your head. And allow there to be an imaginary outlet at the top of your head where any excess energy is flowing upwards and away from you. So we have this continuous chain of energy up through us as we inhale. For the next few big deep breaths, begin slowly integrating yourself or tuning yourself into your surroundings. This can look like two options, either keeping your eyes closed and tuning into a sound around you and allowing that breath to expand your awareness into that sound so it becomes kind of part of your body. So find something that seems appealing to you. The second option would be letting the eyes open, but keeping the gaze soft and just gazing around the room that you're in and finding something that seems appealing to your eyes, to your body. So it might be a color on the wall, it might be a decoration somewhere in the room, it might be a pet purring in front of you. Whatever it might be the texture of the furniture around you. It could be literally anything. Let that imagination take over. So either eyes closed, listening, tuning into a sound, or eyes open, tuning into something visual around you. And as you find that, same concept, allow that inhale to help you expand your awareness into whatever you found that seems appealing and soothing to you. And allowing the exhale to just allow you to settle into that sensation. Few breaths. Last couple things here. We're going to take a big, as long as you can, inhale. And when you get to the end of that inhale, I want you to hold it all in at the top. So inhaling as deep as you can, restricting that exhale, so not exhaling. You're gonna hold that inhale at the top for as long as you possibly can until the body forces an exhale to happen. And the body will eventually force it. So hold as long as you can until that exhale is forced out by the body. Trust the body to do that for you. And as that exhale eventually happens, allow it to come out in whatever form it wants. If that's a sigh, if that's a noise, if that's just a big long breath, that's fine. And repeat that cycle 2 more times. So inhaling to capacity, holding as long as possible, and allowing the body to do the work of the exhale for you. Once you've completed 2 or 3 rounds of that inhale, hold to forced exhale, let your breath just begin returning to its normal rhythm. Eyes, if they aren't already open, can open. Small movements with the fingers and toes, and just start connecting back into the body and the room. A few deeper breaths, filling the body up. And as you reintegrate, we'll leave today's session there. And you can begin reintegrating and moving on with the rest of your day as seems fit. Thank you all for joining me as usual. And I will see you all either tomorrow or Thursday. Have a great rest of your days. And we'll see you soon.